the book on managing rental properties, a proven system for finding, screening, and managing tenants with fewer headaches and maximum profits, written by Brandon Turner and Heather Turner. Summarized by detailed book summaries. Don't forget to subscribe. Chapter 1. So you want to be a landlord? Picture this. It's a warm afternoon. You're lounging in your backyard, iced tea in hand, birds chirping in the background. Your phone vibrates, not a call, not a problem, but a bank alert. Rent just came in. Effortless. Smooth. Reliable. That's the dream, right? Passive income from rental properties. Who wouldn't want that? But then the curtain lifts. The real world walks in, and you're standing in a flooded kitchen at 11:43 p.m., trying to remember where the main water shutoff valve is while your tenant stands beside you panicking. The dream? Still real, but maybe just a little more complicated than you thought. This first chapter of the book on managing rental properties isn't just a soft introduction. It's a reality check. And it's one you need. Brandon and Heather Turner don't ease you in with fluff. They start with the truth. Because before you decide you're ready to manage rental properties, you need to ask a deeper question. Are you ready to be a landlord? And not just any landlord, a competent professional one who runs this like a business. Because if you're not, the dream can become a nightmare fast. The Turners begin by sharing their own rookie mistakes. Brandon tells the story of his first rental, a well-intentioned but poorly executed leap into landlording. He had no lease template, no screening process, and no real plan. He just jumped, and he got burned. Late rent, damages, awkward confrontations. It was a rough wake-up call. But it was also the catalyst that taught him something life-changing. This isn't just about owning property. This is about managing people, systems, expectations, and most of all, yourself. Let's pause and ask a few questions together, shall we? Questions that might already be simmering in your mind. Is real estate really passive income? Can I make a full-time living from rental properties? What happens if I get stuck with a terrible tenant? Do I have the personality for this? And here's the answer the Turners give us, wrapped in hard-earned wisdom. Yes, rental properties can create financial freedom, but only if you treat them like a business from day one. That's the heartbeat of this chapter. It's not about scaring you off. It's about calling you up. The dream of mailbox money is real, but it doesn't start with luck or optimism. It starts with systems. You see, being a landlord is a mix of two powerful identities. 1. The investor. You buy wisely, think long-term, and analyze numbers. 2. The business operator. You build systems, handle problems, and create repeatable processes. The Turners argue that most people want the first role, the investor side. That's sexy. That's Shark Tank. But very few embrace the second. And the truth is, the second role is what makes or breaks your rental success. This chapter emphasizes the importance of mindset. It challenges you to stop thinking like a hobbyist and start thinking like a CEO. Would a CEO handle maintenance calls by winging it? Would they lease to tenants without screening? Would they forget to document payments, repairs, and legal notices? Of course not. And neither should you. Another core insight here is emotional preparation. Brandon and Heather are brutally honest. Tenants are people, and people are messy. Sometimes they lie. Sometimes they don't pay. Sometimes they call you for things they could have Googled. If you don't develop thick skin and clear boundaries, you'll burn out fast. But they don't leave you in the dark. They promise that with the right structure, checklists, templates, scripts, legal protection, you can minimize those stressors and build something you're proud of. They also dive into a crucial choice you'll face early on. Should I manage my properties myself or hire a property manager? And their advice is golden. Even if you plan to hand off the management later, you should still learn the process first. Why? Because knowledge protects you. If your property manager makes a mistake, you'll spot it. If your tenant pushes the boundary, you'll know how to respond. This isn't about becoming a control freak. It's about building a strong foundation. Finally, the chapter wraps up on an encouraging note. Yes, mistakes will happen. Even the most experienced landlords make them. But the Turners offer this reassurance. Every mistake is a lesson. Every challenge is an opportunity to build a better system. So let's step back and summarize what this first chapter plants in our minds. 1. Being a landlord is about people, not just property. 2. Treating this like a business is non-negotiable. 3. Mistakes are part of the process, but only if you learn from them. 4. Systems, preparation, and mindset are more valuable than charisma or charm. In other words, don't rely on luck, rely on structure. Now, if Chapter 1 was the eye-opener, Chapter 2 is the playbook. It's where Brandon and Heather pull back the curtain and reveal the 8 business traits every successful landlord must develop. These traits aren't just nice to have, they're essential. Think of them as the muscle groups of your rental property body. If you skip leg day or say, skip learning how to communicate well, you'll feel it later. Ready to discover those traits? Let's dive in. Chapter 2. The 8 business attributes of a successful landlord. If you had to choose someone to run your real estate empire for you, someone who would protect your investments, solve problems, work hard, and treat tenants well, what kind of person would you hire? Would you look for a genius with spreadsheets, a smooth talker with charm, or someone who simply never gives up? Now flip the mirror. Because if you want to be a successful landlord, you are that person. You're the CEO, the janitor, the HR rep, and sometimes even the therapist. That's the beauty and challenge of landlording. It's not just about properties, it's about you. In this chapter, Brandon and Heather Turner introduce us to what they believe are the 8 foundational business traits of successful landlords. These aren't fancy personality tests or gimmicks. These are real practical traits they've seen make or break landlords in the real world. And here's the best part. None of them are reserved for the lucky or naturally gifted. Every single one can be developed, practiced, and improved over time. The first trait is a willingness to learn. It sounds simple, but it's surprisingly rare. The Turners argue that most people who fail at landlording didn't fail because of bad tenants or bad properties, they failed because they stopped learning. The best landlords are curious. They ask questions. They read books like this one, attend workshops, listen to podcasts, and most importantly, learn from their own mistakes. Laws change, markets evolve, tenants become more tech-savvy. If you're not learning, you're slowly falling behind. Next comes patience, and you'll need it in spades. Whether you're waiting for the right tenant to come along, dealing with a plumbing issue that drags on for weeks, or listening to a long-winded excuse about why rent is late, patience will keep you from making emotional decisions. But patience isn't just about calmness in the moment. It's about taking the long view. Building a profitable rental portfolio doesn't happen overnight. Good systems take time to set up. Relationships with tenants take time to build. Success takes time to grow. Third on the list is persistence. Landlording will knock you down at some point, probably more than once. The water heater will burst on Christmas Eve. A tenant will break the lease and leave you with damages. The city might send you a notice for a violation you didn't even know existed. The question isn't if you'll face setbacks. The question is, will you get back up? The Turners emphasize that persistence, not perfection, is what separates the pros from the quitters. Then there are people skills. You might be surprised to find this on the list, but the Turners insist it's one of the most crucial. Landlording is a people business. You deal with tenants, contractors, inspectors, neighbors, and city officials. If you can't communicate clearly, manage conflict, and build rapport, you'll spend more time fighting fires than collecting rent. But people skills can be learned through practice, reading, and observing. You don't have to be the life of the party. You just need to be calm, clear, and consistent. Next comes a strong work ethic. This is the engine that drives everything else. At least in the beginning, landlording is not passive. You'll be answering calls, filling vacancies, chasing payments, and responding to emergencies. It's work. But it's work that can pay off tremendously if you stick with it. The Turners remind us that building any business takes hustle. And this one is no different. A strong work ethic doesn't mean you never rest. It means you don't shy away from doing what needs to be done, even when it's inconvenient. Another key trait is the desire to treat landlording like a business. This mindset shift alone can save you years of frustration. Landlording isn't a hobby. It's not something you do casually or emotionally or off the cuff. It's a business, and businesses have systems. They use contracts, keep records, track expenses, and follow procedures. The Turners challenge you to think like a franchise owner, someone who wants to create repeatable success, not just wing it every time a problem pops up. Closely tied to that is organization. Ever tried to track rent payments in your head? Or search your phone for a lease agreement from 2 years ago? Disaster. Organization means having your documents in place, your records stored properly, your emails saved, and your communication systems nailed down. When you're organized, you're protected. You're also far less stressed. The Turners recommend creating checklists, using property management software, and setting up email templates for repeatable tasks. And finally, perhaps the most important trait of all, the ability to delay gratification. This one stings a little because it's hard. Let's say you just pocketed your first $800 in cash flow. Do you buy that new gadget? Or do you set it aside for future repairs? Do you reinvest in your property? Or reward yourself immediately? The Turners argue that the landlords who win in the long run are those who think long-term. They save for capital expenses. They build reserves. They sacrifice short-term pleasure for long-term freedom. These 8 attributes aren't meant to intimidate you. They're meant to shape your journey. The Turners are clear. You don't need to have all of these mastered today, but you need to start practicing them. You need to know what you're building toward. You need to see yourself not just as a property owner, but as the captain of a growing, evolving business. And here's the real takeaway. If you focus on becoming the kind of person who embodies these 8 traits, everything else becomes easier. The systems make more sense. The stress becomes manageable. The decisions become clearer because your foundation is strong. So let's recap them one more time as pillars of your landlord identity: a willingness to learn, patience, persistence, people skills, a strong work ethic, business-minded thinking, organizational skills, and the ability to delay gratification. Master those, or at least aim to, and the rest of the journey becomes smoother, more rewarding, and far more profitable. And speaking of the journey, now that we've explored who you need to be, it's time to explore what you need to do. In Chapter 3, the Turners walk us through the initial steps every landlord must take before the first ad ever goes out. From setting up your systems to getting legally prepared, to deciding where and what kind of property you'll manage, this next chapter turns theory into action. Let's dive into the blueprint. Chapter 3. Initial steps. You've just closed on your first rental property. The papers are signed, the keys are in your hand, and your heart's pounding with equal parts excitement and nervous energy. You can already hear the passive income whispering promises of freedom. But then the question hits. Now what? That single moment, that pause between ownership and action, is where most new landlords fumble. They think the hard part is over, but really the game is just beginning. In this chapter, Brandon and Heather Turner guide us through the initial steps every landlord should take before ever placing a for rent ad. And let me tell you, this isn't just a checklist. It's the foundation of a successful, stress-minimized rental business. Right from the start, the Turners are clear. If you rush in without systems, without structure, without clarity, you're setting yourself up for a world of headaches. That first late payment, that emergency maintenance call, that awkward tenant conversation, they're all 100 times harder when you're improvising. But with preparation, you can handle almost anything. So, what do the initial steps look like for a landlord who wants to do it right? The first and arguably most critical move is to define your tenant criteria. This means sitting down before you even meet a single applicant and deciding, what does the ideal tenant look like for this property? It might sound obvious, but most landlords wing it here. They rely on gut instinct or vague impressions, and that's how trouble starts. The Turners suggest considering several clear metrics: credit score, income-to-rent ratio, rental history, employment status, criminal background, and more. Do you want a no-pets policy? Are you okay with co-signers? Will you accept applicants with bankruptcies? By getting all of this down in writing now, you're not just preparing, you're protecting yourself. Because when a real human being stands in front of you, telling a compelling story, you won't be tempted to make an exception that turns into a 6-month ordeal. And it's not just about being picky. It's about being consistent and legally compliant. Which leads to another key piece of the puzzle: creating a written rental policy. Think of this as your personal tenant filtering constitution. It lays out your minimum standards and gives you a defensible, consistent basis for every application decision. If you're ever accused of discrimination, this written policy can be your legal shield. And more than that, it keeps your decision-making clear and professional. Now, once you've defined who you'll rent to, you need to figure out how you'll collect rent. This is another place where new landlords often trip up. They allow tenants to pay however they like, cash 1 month, a check the next, maybe a late Venmo or a crumpled money order. That chaos creates confusion, delays, and disputes. The Turners are adamant about this. Use online rent collection. Choose a system like apartments.com, formerly Cozy, Buildium, Avail, or direct ACH bank transfers that logs payments, tracks dates, and sends reminders. This isn't just about ease. It's about professionalism. When rent collection is automated, tenants pay on time more often, disputes vanish, and your stress plummets. But what happens when something breaks? That's the next setup area: maintenance systems. Most landlords don't think about this until a pipe bursts or the toilet overflows. By then, they're scrambling to find a plumber, negotiating rates in a panic, and dealing with furious tenants. That's not management, that's firefighting. Instead, the Turners suggest lining up your team before there's a crisis. Call around. Interview plumbers, electricians, handymen. Ask about their availability, emergency call rates, and response times. Build a shortlist and save it somewhere accessible. Even better, create a maintenance request form, a simple online or printable form tenants can use to describe the issue in detail. This reduces vague complaints and gives you a paper trail. And speaking of protection, this is where the Turners dive into one of the less glamorous but absolutely vital areas: legal and business setup. That means getting familiar with your local landlord-tenant laws, and yes, possibly talking to a real estate attorney. You need to know the rules in your city and state. How much can you charge for a security deposit? What notice is required to raise rent or evict a tenant? What fees are legal? You don't need to become a lawyer, but you do need to understand your rights and responsibilities. They also suggest forming a legal entity like an LLC if appropriate, especially if you plan to grow your portfolio. This creates separation between you and your business, which can protect your personal assets. It's also a good time to set up a dedicated business bank account and bookkeeping system, something that will save you enormous time and stress come tax season. Now comes the fun part: property presentation. Here's where you shift from preparation mode to positioning. Because the truth is, how your property looks determines who it attracts. Is it clean, bright, and modern, or dingy, worn, and neglected? Tenants notice everything. The Turners recommend walking your unit as if you were the tenant. Do the lights all work? Are there lingering smells? Are the fixtures up to date? Fresh paint, modern cabinet handles, and a deep cleaning can transform even an older unit. These details matter not just for aesthetics, but because good presentation signals that you care. And when tenants see that you care, they tend to care more too. Finally, the last piece of this puzzle is pricing. Set the rent too high and the unit sits vacant. Too low and you leave money on the table, or attract applicants who can't afford more and may struggle to pay. The Turners suggest researching comparable listings on sites like Zillow, Craigslist, and Rentometer. See what other properties in your area of similar size, quality, and features are renting for. Then test your price. If you get no calls in 3 days, it's too high. If you're flooded with unqualified applicants, it might be too low. And just like that, your setup is complete. You've got your ideal tenant profile. Your rent collection and maintenance systems are ready. Your property is clean, legal, and priced right. You're not just hoping for success anymore, you've designed for it. This chapter might not have had flashy stories or dramatic twists, but in many ways, it's the most important one so far. Because this is where you step out of the fog of uncertainty and into the clarity of preparation. Every system you build now is one you won't have to fix later. Every document you prepare is one more anchor of professionalism. So take a breath and look around. You've come a long way from the daydreams of passive income. Now you're running a business. And with that business structure in place, you're ready to face one of the most serious and most misunderstood realities in the rental world: fair housing law. In Chapter 4, Brandon and Heather walk you through how to stay legal, stay ethical, and stay protected. Because when it comes to treating tenants fairly, ignorance isn't just risky, it's costly. Let's head into the next chapter together. Chapter 4. Fair housing. So you're ready. The property is cleaned up, the systems are in place, the rent amount has been set. You've done the prep work, the behind-the-scenes setup, and now you're about to hit publish on your very first rental listing. But before you take that leap, before you even write the words 2-bedroom apartment for rent, there's something you must understand. Something subtle but critically important. Something that can either protect your business or ruin it. It's called fair housing. Now, I know what you might be thinking. I'm not racist. I don't discriminate. I treat everyone the same. And I believe you. But here's the catch. Fair housing laws don't care about what's in your heart. They care about what's on paper, about what you say, about what you do. And even if your intentions are good, if your practices violate these laws, you could be facing fines, legal trouble, and public shame before you can say no pets allowed. That's why Brandon and Heather Turner devote this entire chapter to fair housing. Because once you understand it, you're not just avoiding legal trouble, you're building a foundation of trust, professionalism, and ethical clarity that will serve you for the rest of your career. So let's get into it. Fair housing at its core is about ensuring everyone has equal access to housing opportunities. The Fair Housing Act was passed in 1968 as part of the Civil Rights Act, and its purpose was to stop discrimination in the housing industry. It started with a few protected categories and has expanded over time. Today, under federal law, there are 7 protected classes that you as a landlord cannot discriminate against in any way: race, color, religion, sex, national origin, familial status, whether or not they have children, disability. These might seem obvious. Of course, you wouldn't post an ad saying no black tenants or no kids allowed. That's blatant discrimination. But here's where it gets complicated. Discrimination doesn't always wear a flashing sign. Sometimes it shows up in tiny casual moments, in the way you word your ad, in the applicants you just don't feel right about, in the tenants you deny without consistent documentation. And that's where good landlords get into trouble. Take, for example, a phrase like, perfect for young professionals. It sounds harmless, right? But to a fair housing attorney, it might be seen as discouraging older applicants or families with children. Or maybe you say your property is ideal for single adults. That could be seen as excluding married couples or people with kids. Even saying Christian neighborhood might cross a line into religious preference. That's why the Turners hammer this point home. Focus on the property, not the person. When writing your listing, describe the space, the features, the location, the amenities, not who you think it's best for. Say 2-bedroom unit with modern appliances and off-street parking, not great starter home for newlyweds. But ads are just the beginning. Fair housing applies to every step of the tenant screening process. So what do you do when people start applying? Here's the golden rule. Be consistent. Every single time. That means having your tenant selection criteria written down before the first application comes in. You decide objectively what credit score you'll accept, what income level you require, how many occupants you'll allow, and whether you accept pets. And then you apply those standards to everyone without exception. If you approve one applicant with a 620 credit score and deny another with a 610, you better have a clear and documented reason. Because if those 2 applicants happen to be of different races or religions, or one has a disability, and you made your decision based on gut feeling, you're walking on dangerous ground. That's why documentation matters so much. Keep notes. Record why you made each decision. Save emails, application forms, and screening reports. This paper trail is your safety net, not just in case you're challenged, but to keep yourself honest and consistent. Another key piece of fair housing is understanding reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities. This doesn't just mean installing wheelchair ramps. It also means things like allowing a service dog in a no-pet building, or letting a tenant with anxiety submit repair requests in writing instead of over the phone. These accommodations are often easy to provide, and the law requires that you do, unless it causes an undue burden, a term that's defined pretty narrowly. And the Turners stress this. Don't just assume what does or doesn't count as a disability. If a tenant asks for an accommodation, take it seriously. Ask for proper documentation if needed, consult your local housing authority, and err on the side of kindness and legality. Now you might be thinking, okay, I've got the federal stuff down. I'm good, right? Not quite. Because in addition to federal law, many states and cities have their own fair housing regulations, and these often include additional protected classes. Things like sexual orientation, gender identity, marital status, source of income like using housing vouchers, or even criminal history. So what's legal in one state might get you sued in another. The Turners urge you strongly to research your local and state laws. Call your city housing department. Talk to a local attorney. Don't rely on hearsay from other landlords online. And yes, it's a lot, but it's manageable when you do what the Turners teach. Build a system. Standardize your ads. Standardize your screening. Standardize your communication. When every applicant goes through the same process, sees the same forms, hears the same questions, you're no longer vulnerable to bias or inconsistency. Fair housing isn't about avoiding lawsuits. It's about being fair. Period. It's about making sure every human being, regardless of background, gets the same shot at having a safe, clean place to live. That's good for society. And it's good for your business too. So let's review the safeguards. Know the 7 federally protected classes. Learn your state and local protections. Avoid personal or exclusive language in ads. Create clear written screening criteria. Apply your process consistently. Document every decision. Be prepared to make reasonable accommodations. Consult with experts when unsure. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be aware and intentional. By the time you finish this chapter, you begin to see how professionalism isn't just about polish and spreadsheets. It's about how you treat people. It's about the systems you use to make sure everyone gets a fair shake. And that, more than anything else, sets you apart from the landlords who treat this as a casual side hustle. So now, with legal clarity on your side, your business principles in place, and a deep respect for the humans behind each application, you're ready to do what most new landlords think comes first: market your rental. In Chapter 5, Brandon and Heather will show you how to attract the right tenants, not just by posting an ad, but by telling a compelling story. You'll learn how to write listings that stand out, take photos that pop, and generate leads without wasting time. The kind of marketing that brings the right people to your door. Let's dive in. Chapter 5. Advertising your vacancy. There's a quiet moment that always comes before the action. The property is spotless. The walls gleam with fresh paint. The fridge hums, the lights shine, and every drawer and door opens without a squeak. You've run through the systems: rent collection, maintenance response, legal compliance, all of it humming, ready to go. But now comes the big moment. Opening the door to the world. How do you actually attract the kind of tenant you want? This is where Chapter 5 meets you. Brandon and Heather Turner slow things down and ask the question most new landlords forget to ask. How do you tell the story of your rental in a way that speaks directly to the right person? This chapter isn't about putting an ad on Craigslist and hoping for the best. It's about approaching your vacancy like a marketer, because that's exactly what you are. They begin by explaining that your rental isn't just a space. It's a story, a lifestyle, a chapter in someone's life waiting to unfold. And your job as the landlord is to craft a message that reaches into the noise and grabs the attention of the right person, not just anyone. The first part of that story is your headline. It's what people see first in listings, search results, and scrolling feeds. And as the Turners point out, most landlords completely waste this opportunity with something like 2BR apartment in town. It's dull, vague, and ignorable. But a good headline, it grabs. It sparkles. Something like bright 2-bedroom with modern kitchen, steps from downtown, or cozy renovated unit, quiet street, pets welcome. Suddenly your property stands out. The goal is simple: get them to click. That's it. Just enough interest to get them into the listing. Once they're in, the description does the heavy lifting. Here the Turners break it into a few parts. Start strong with a sentence or two that highlight the property's most desirable features. Is it a renovated kitchen? Huge backyard? Close to the bus line? Lead with the benefits, not just the specs. Then go into details: bedroom count, bathrooms, square footage, parking, appliances, utilities, storage, laundry. But don't just list them like a robot. Weave in lifestyle. Instead of washer/dryer in unit, try enjoy the convenience of in-unit laundry. No more late-night trips to the laundromat. That one sentence connects emotionally. The Turners encourage you to imagine what kind of life your ideal tenant might have. Are they a young couple starting out? A single parent looking for peace and security? A professional who needs a short commute and strong Wi-Fi? Don't make assumptions about people, but do emphasize what the home offers to a lifestyle. And then, most importantly, follow fair housing laws. They remind us not to say things like perfect for singles or ideal for Christians or not suitable for kids. Even if your intent is harmless, those phrases can be interpreted as discriminatory. Instead, focus on the unit itself, its features, its feel, its perks. Now, while words are powerful, nothing brings a listing to life like good photos. This is where the Turners pull no punches. Most landlords, they say, are lazy with pictures. They take a few blurry shots with poor lighting, and it makes even a beautiful space look miserable. So what makes a great photo set? First, clean the unit thoroughly. Don't photograph a messy or half-done space. Wait for daylight, open the blinds, and use natural light to make the rooms feel bright and inviting. Shoot landscape orientation, stand in corners to show space, and include every key area: living room, bedrooms, kitchen, bathroom, exterior, and any bonuses like porches or storage rooms. Brightness, clarity, and perspective matter. If you can, include a video walkthrough. Nothing fancy, just a simple phone camera, steady hands, and a slow narrated walkthrough of the space. It makes your listing feel transparent and professional. People love seeing the flow of a home, not just snapshots. With your listing ready, where do you post it? The Turners recommend a multi-platform approach. Start with the heavy hitters: Zillow, Apartments.com, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. But don't stop there. Post to local real estate groups, Facebook housing boards, neighborhood apps, and anywhere people in your community actually look for housing. Every market is different, so test and track what works in yours. And then comes the flood: inquiries, calls, messages, emails. This is where many landlords get overwhelmed. But not you, because you've got a system. The Turners suggest filtering your leads with a quick pre-screening questionnaire. Ask things like, when are you looking to move in? How many people would be living in the unit? Do you have pets? What is your total monthly income? Have you ever been evicted? These aren't interrogation questions, they're filters. They help you know who's serious, who qualifies, and who might not be a fit. You don't need to waste time showing your place to people who can't or won't meet your standards. Once you have pre-qualified leads, batch your showings. Instead of 10 individual appointments, choose a 2-hour block, say Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon, and invite everyone to swing by. It's efficient, it creates a subtle sense of urgency, and it makes your life easier. The Turners drive home a point here that's easy to miss. How you present your rental during this stage sets the tone for your whole landlord-tenant relationship. If you're disorganized, flaky, or unclear during advertising, that will attract tenants who match that energy. But if you're polished, prompt, and respectful, good tenants will take notice and rise to meet your standard. They wrap the chapter with a simple but powerful truth. You're not just trying to fill a vacancy. You're creating a first impression. And that impression, through your photos, your listing, your communication, will shape how tenants see you, not just the unit. And in this business, trust and professionalism go a long, long way. So let's recap the flow of a strong vacancy advertising strategy. Start with a compelling headline that grabs attention. Write a detailed, fair housing compliant description that sells the experience. Take bright, high-quality photos that show the space at its best. Post on multiple platforms, local and national. Use pre-screening questions to filter serious, qualified leads. Schedule group showings to save time and create demand. Be consistent, clear, and professional from the first contact. Because when all of that's done right, you don't have to chase tenants. The right ones come to you. And once they do, once you've got a dozen applications sitting in your inbox, that's when the next phase begins: screening. In Chapter 6, Brandon and Heather break down exactly how to vet applicants, legally, ethically, and thoroughly, so you can hand over your keys with confidence, not cross fingers. Let's keep going. Chapter 6. Tenant pre-screening. The first inquiry always feels like a little spark. You've posted your listing. You've polished the photos. You've written a description that sells not just square footage but lifestyle. And then ding! A message arrives. Someone wants to see the place. Another call. A few texts. Suddenly, you're fielding interest and it feels like momentum. But don't let that excitement rush you. Because right here, right now, you're standing at a crossroads, and how you handle these first contacts will shape everything that follows. In this chapter, Brandon and Heather Turner introduce a principle that every successful landlord lives by, even if they don't always name it: pre-screening. This is the firewall between your rental and disaster. It's the quiet skill that separates the pros from the ones who burn out fast. And it starts with one simple idea. Not every applicant deserves your time. Now that might sound harsh, but it's not about being judgmental. It's about being smart. You're not running a charity. You're running a business. And bad tenants? They're expensive. They drain your energy, delay your cash flow, and often leave your property in worse shape than they found it. Pre-screening is how you protect yourself before you spend your Saturday showing the unit to someone who was never qualified in the first place. So how does pre-screening actually work? The Turners suggest putting a simple, consistent process in place, something you can repeat with every inquiry, without guesswork or emotion. It all begins the moment someone expresses interest in your listing. Whether they send you a Facebook message, call your phone, or submit a form on Zillow, your job is the same. Ask the right questions. Here's what that looks like. First, thank them for their interest. Always be polite and professional. Then say something like, "To help us match applicants with our property, I have a few quick questions for you." And then you ask. The Turners offer a list of pre-screening questions that are respectful but revealing. When are you looking to move in? This helps you assess whether their timeline matches yours. If they want to move in next week but your unit won't be ready for another 3, there's no need to go further. Why are you moving? People move for all kinds of reasons: relocation, upsizing, downsizing, issues with current housing. Listen carefully here. If they start bad-mouthing their last landlord, that's a yellow flag. If they say something vague or defensive, trust your instinct but verify later. How many people would be living in the unit? You need to make sure they're within legal occupancy limits, and you want to avoid any surprises. Do you have any pets? If your property doesn't allow pets, or if you only accept small animals, this matters immediately. What's your total monthly household income? It's not rude to ask. Most landlords require 2.5 to 3 times the rent in income. If they're earning far below that, you're setting both of you up for failure. Have you ever been evicted? This one's critical. Past evictions don't automatically disqualify someone, but they are a red flag. The way someone answers this can tell you a lot. Are you okay with a credit and background check? If they hesitate or push back, take note. Good tenants expect this, bad ones try to avoid it. Now here's the key. You ask every applicant the same questions. You deliver them with the same tone. You log their answers in the same way. This keeps your process fair and fair housing compliant. It also trains you to stay focused on facts, not feelings. Because here's the trap many landlords fall into. They trust their gut too early. They hear someone's voice or see their photo or feel empathy for their situation, and suddenly they're bending the rules. The Turners are clear on this. Your gut has a place, but only after you've followed your process. Intuition is a backup tool, not your primary filter. Once someone answers your questions and assuming their answers qualify, you can invite them to a showing. And here's where the Turners suggest a powerful time-saving trick: group showings. Instead of driving back and forth to meet 10 different people, pick a 1 or 2 hour window and invite several interested applicants to come during that time. Not only does this save you time, it creates a subtle sense of competition. It shows applicants that the unit is in demand and encourages them to act fast. During the showing, pay attention. Are they polite? Do they seem serious? Do they ask reasonable questions? Do they arrive on time? While none of these are official screening criteria, they give you insight into what it would be like to rent to this person. After the showing, thank them again and let them know how to proceed. You don't need to make promises on the spot. Just say, "We'll be reviewing applications and we'll follow up soon." By now, you've done most of the heavy lifting. You've filtered out unqualified applicants before they ever walk through the door. You've saved yourself from awkward conversations, wasted time, and preventable headaches. And here's what you've also done. You've sent a message to the kind of tenant you do want. I'm a professional. I take my property seriously, and I expect the same from you. Believe it or not, great tenants find that refreshing. They want a landlord who is responsive, organized, and fair. Your pre-screening process tells them that's exactly who you are. The Turners close this chapter with a reminder that pre-screening isn't just about protecting your rental. It's about setting the tone. It builds the boundary between random strangers and qualified applicants. It helps you move from chaos to clarity. Because when you've done this right, What you're left with isn't a stack of question marks. It's a short list of real possibilities. People who might just be the perfect fit for your space. And that leads naturally into the next crucial step. Tenant screening. In Chapter 7, you'll learn how to pull reports, contact references, verify income, and choose with confidence. So the person you hand your keys to is someone who'll make your life easier, not harder. You're almost there. Let's keep going. Chapter 7. The application process and tenant screening. So you've done the work, the ad is polished, the showings are complete, and now sitting in your inbox or maybe in a neat online dashboard are a handful of applications. A few names stand out. They were on time, they asked good questions, they seemed friendly. You feel like you found a winner. But before your intuition leads you to hand over the keys, Brandon and Heather Turner ask you to stop and take a breath. Because this is the moment that separates amateurs from professionals. This is the line between guessing and knowing. And in the world of rental property management, guessing can cost you thousands. Tenant screening isn't about being suspicious. It's about being systematic. It's about making decisions based on data, not just charm. As the Turners put it, tenant screening is where you make your money or lose it. One great tenant can make your life easy for years. One bad one can drain your finances and your energy. So let's slow this part down and do it right. It begins with the application. This is the tenant's resume. It's where they present themselves in writing, laying out their income, rental history, employment, and identity. A solid application should ask for key information: full legal name, date of birth, current address, social security number for running reports, income details, employment history, prior landlords, number of occupants, pets, vehicles, and of course, consent to perform background and credit checks. Today, the Turners recommend using online applications. Not only are they easier to collect and store, they also integrate directly with screening tools. Many platforms allow the tenant to cover the screening cost themselves. A bonus for you and a minor but reasonable test of seriousness for them. Once you've got a completed application, it's time to dig into the screening. This is where you look beyond the paper. You start with the basics. Can this person afford the rent? The standard is typically 3 times the monthly rent in gross monthly income. That means if your unit rents for $1,200, the household should earn at least $3,600 a month. Ask for pay stubs, employment letters, or bank statements to verify. And do the math, don't just take numbers at face value. Next, you turn to the credit report. This isn't about finding someone with perfect credit. Most renters won't have 800+ scores. What you're really looking for is behavior. Do they pay their bills? Are they overwhelmed with debt? Are there any collections, especially from past landlords, utility companies, or property managers? Those are red flags. The Turners suggest a soft benchmark. Scores in the mid-600s or higher are generally workable. But again, context matters. A few late payments on a car loan? Maybe not a deal breaker. Multiple unpaid collections from rent or electricity bills? That's a hard no. Then comes the background check. This one requires thought and compassion. You're not trying to penalize people for life's mistakes, but you are responsible for keeping your property safe and your other tenants, or neighbors, secure. Look for serious criminal offenses, recent violent crimes, drug manufacturing or trafficking, or habitual criminal behavior. Minor or very old infractions might not matter, but patterns of trouble are something you can't ignore. From there, you move into the rental history. Call their current and previous landlords. Ask the simple questions first. Did they pay rent on time? Did they maintain the unit? Were there complaints? Did they follow the rules? Would you rent to them again? Pay attention to how the previous landlord answers. Hesitation or vagueness can be just as telling as what's said. Also, be cautious of fake references. Sometimes tenants list friends or relatives as landlords. Cross-check the address, Google the number. Do a little homework to be sure. With income, credit, background, and rental history in hand, you now have a well-rounded picture. But the Turners add one more element here: your gut feeling, but only after the data checks out. It's okay to notice tone, attitude, or behavior. Were they courteous in their messages? Did they follow instructions? Did they show respect for your time? These are soft signals, and they matter. Just don't let them override hard facts. Once you've evaluated an application, there are usually 3 paths forward. approve, decline, or ask for more information. If everything looks solid, send a congratulations message and prepare the lease. If there are problems, multiple red flags, lack of income, unverifiable information, you can deny the application. Just make sure to do so legally. If your decision was based on a credit or background report, you're required to issue an adverse action notice. Many online tools automate this step. Sometimes the application isn't bad, it's just incomplete. Maybe the income is a little low, but they offer a cosigner. Maybe the credit score is weak, but they've paid rent faithfully for years and have excellent references. That's where your discretion and your written criteria come into play. Don't bend your standards on a whim, but also remember that people are more than numbers. Be fair. Be consistent. And here's something easy to miss. Good tenants are watching you too. They're noticing how organized you are, how responsive, how fair. Your screening process tells them something important. This landlord has their act together. And that attracts the kind of tenants who respect structure, communication, and mutual respect. Brandon and Heather close this chapter by reminding us that tenant screening is not a chore. It's a gift. It's the gate that keeps your property and your sanity protected. It's the process that lets you sleep at night, knowing that the person living in your house isn't just someone who pays rent, but someone who fits. Someone who respects your space, your rules, and the business you're building. And when you get this part right, everything else runs smoother. Fewer late payments, fewer calls at midnight, fewer evictions, headaches, or hard lessons. All because you took the time to slow down, verify, and say yes with confidence. And now it's time. You've found your tenant. The application is approved. The green light is on. In Chapter 8, we step into the final stretch before handing over the keys, the lease, the move-in, and setting the tone for a great landlord-tenant relationship. Let's turn the page and seal the deal. Chapter 8. Signing the rental contract. This is the moment where everything begins to feel real. After weeks of prepping the unit, filtering inquiries, screening applications, and carefully choosing the right tenant, you're here at the table. The lease is printed or opened on your screen. The applicant-turned-future tenant sits across from you, either in person or virtually. You're about to hand over the keys to your investment, your hard-earned property, your slice of long-term wealth. But first, there's one critical step: signing the rental contract. Now, a lease may look like just another stack of paperwork, but Brandon and Heather Turner urge you not to underestimate it. The lease is your shield. It's the clear, written foundation for everything that will happen in the landlord-tenant relationship from this moment forward. And more than that, it's your opportunity to establish boundaries, expectations, and professionalism from the very beginning. Think of the lease not as a formality but as a contractual handshake that says, "This is what I'm offering, and here's what I expect in return." A vague or sloppy lease can unravel your entire operation. That's why the Turners stress one thing above all. Your lease must be detailed, state-specific, and legally enforceable. Not all leases are created equal. Downloading a free template online might seem quick, but if it's not tailored to your state's laws or lacks vital clauses, you're setting yourself up for trouble down the line. Your lease needs to clearly outline who's responsible for what, when rent is due, what's allowed and what's not, and exactly what happens if something goes wrong. At a minimum, your lease should include the names of all adult occupants, the full address of the rental unit, the lease term, rent amount, due date, late fees, the security deposit, utilities, pet policy, maintenance responsibilities, and rules around guests, smoking, noise, and property care. Everything matters. The more detailed the lease, the less confusion there'll be later on. And now comes the signing. The Turners encourage landlords to treat this moment with purpose. Don't rush it. Whether you're meeting in person or using a digital platform like DocuSign, this is your chance to walk the tenant through the agreement. Go line by line, especially on the items that could become sticking points later: rent collection, maintenance expectations, pet rules, subletting policies, and move-out procedures. You're not just getting their signature, you're educating your tenant about the agreement they're entering into. That education can prevent so many future misunderstandings. Here's where you lean into your professionalism. Explain your late fee structure clearly. Show them how to submit maintenance requests. Discuss communication expectations. For example, you might let them know that texting is okay for urgent issues, but email is preferred for routine questions. This is also the time to reiterate key rules. If you have a strict no-smoking policy or a rule about guests staying more than 2 weeks, be sure to say so out loud, even if it's in the lease. Sometimes hearing it directly helps it stick. And then, of course, you handle the financial part. Before you hand over the keys, you should collect all necessary payments. First month's rent, full security deposit, and any other agreed-upon fees like pet deposits or non-refundable cleaning charges. Brandon and Heather are adamant about this. Never accept partial payments at move-in. That's the beginning of a bad pattern. Get everything up front, and be clear that keys won't be released until funds clear. It's not personal. It's just business, and it sets a tone of mutual respect. Next comes the often overlooked, but critically important, move-in condition documentation. Before the tenant settles in, you or your property manager should conduct a thorough walkthrough of the unit, ideally with the tenant present. Use a move-in checklist and take dozens, if not hundreds, of time-stamped photos. Capture every cabinet, wall, floor, window, and fixture. Document wear and tear, existing scuffs, and anything that might later be mistaken for damage. This isn't about catching tenants, it's about protecting both parties. It ensures that when the lease ends, there's no debate about what was there before and what changed. And once the lease is signed, the money collected, and the condition documented, then and only then you hand over the keys. That act, so simple and small, is the final step in a careful process. But don't let its simplicity fool you. You're handing someone access to something that represents your time, your investment, your future goals. The lease signing may be legal, but the key handoff is personal. Brandon and Heather suggest using this moment as one last chance to set the tone. Smile. Be firm but kind. Tell them you're glad to have them. Remind them that communication is key, that you're here to help within reason, but that this is a professional agreement, and you expect mutual respect. When you start the relationship on a note of clarity and mutual dignity, you lay the foundation for a smoother experience going forward. And so it's done. The contract is signed. The deposit is secured. The unit is no longer just a property. It's someone's home. And you? You're no longer preparing to be a landlord. You are one. But the real work is just beginning. In the next chapter, the Turners move beyond contracts and screening and into the heart of day-to-day operations, how to manage relationships, resolve issues, and keep things running like a well-oiled machine. Because a lease may define the relationship, but how you manage that relationship, well, that's where great landlords are made. Let's turn the page and step into Chapter 9, Managing Tenants. Chapter 9. Managing Tenants. The lease is signed, the deposit collected, the keys exchanged. On the surface, everything feels done. You've done the hard part, right? Well, not quite. Because in the eyes of Brandon and Heather Turner, this isn't the end of the journey. It's the beginning. Managing tenants, they explain, is where the true work and the true reward of being a landlord begins. And how you handle this part of the business determines whether your rental experience will be smooth and profitable, or a constant source of stress. Think of it this way. When you manage tenants, you're not just maintaining a building, you're managing relationships, expectations, behavior, and the daily rhythm of real human lives. This chapter isn't about repairs or emergencies. It's about what happens in the quiet in-between, when tenants are living their lives in your property, and you're guiding the experience from just off stage. The first and most important principle of tenant management is simple. Communicate clearly, early, and consistently. Communication is the oil in the engine of this business. Without it, everything grinds. With it, things run smoothly, even when bumps appear in the road. The Turners stress that your tenants should always know how to reach you, when to reach you, and what to expect in return. Whether that means a 24-hour response window, a maintenance request form on your website, or an email-only policy for non-urgent matters, what matters most is that the boundaries are clear. Now let's talk about rent collection. This is where many landlords begin to drift. One tenant forgets to pay. Another says, "I'll have it Friday." A third one pays half now and promises the rest next week. Before you know it, your predictable income has turned into a game of musical chairs. But it doesn't have to be this way. Rent collection should be treated like clockwork. It's not emotional. It's not personal. It's a system. Rent is due on the agreed-upon date, say the 1st of the month. A grace period is allowed, maybe until the 5th. After that, a clearly stated late fee applies. No exceptions. No drama. No just this once. The Turners are crystal clear on this. Consistency is fairness. When your tenants know that the system is firm but fair, they learn to respect it. Wavering not only creates confusion, it invites manipulation. Beyond rent, the next major area of tenant management is maintenance. Maintenance is where trust is built or broken. When something breaks, tenants don't just want it fixed, they want to feel heard. So what happens when the sink leaks, the heater fails, or the toilet clogs? Do you spring into action? Or do you ignore that email until the weekend? Great landlords act fast. Not because they're scared, but because they know that prompt repairs protect the property and preserve goodwill. A leaking pipe doesn't wait until Monday, and a tenant who feels ignored won't hesitate to share that story with others, or look for a better place to live next year. Still, responding quickly doesn't mean being on call 24/7. You are not an emergency room. Brandon and Heather advise setting boundaries. Define what constitutes an emergency, like flooding or no heat in winter, and clarify your availability for non-urgent issues. Maybe routine maintenance requests are handled within 48 hours, while emergencies are addressed immediately. Whatever you decide, write it down, explain it upfront, and deliver on it consistently. Of course, it's not enough to just respond when something goes wrong. Smart landlords also conduct preventive inspections, regular check-ins to catch small issues before they become expensive ones. These aren't surprise inspections, and they shouldn't feel like invasions. They're proactive walkthroughs once or twice a year, where you check smoke detectors, plumbing, appliances, and general cleanliness. They also send a subtle message. This home matters, and I'm paying attention. Tenants who know you care tend to care more in return. But what happens when something does go wrong? What do you do when the tenant starts breaking rules, ignoring requests, or falling behind on rent? Here's where the Turners' advice becomes especially valuable. Don't get angry. Don't get emotional. Get professional. Your lease is your script. When noise complaints arise, pull out the lease and issue a friendly but firm written warning. When rent is late, send the appropriate notice and apply the late fee. When a pet is discovered in a no-pet unit, refer back to the agreement and document the violation. The key is consistency. Document everything. Always follow the procedure. And never bluff. If you say there will be consequences for certain actions, you must follow through. That said, not every situation is a crisis. Sometimes tenants just need a conversation. Maybe they lost a job, are going through a divorce, or had a family emergency. In these cases, Brandon and Heather suggest combining firmness with compassion. You're not a charity, but you're not heartless either. Maybe a short payment plan works. Maybe they need to move out early and avoid an eviction. The best landlords find win-win outcomes whenever possible, but always protect themselves legally. In fact, one of the most important tools in your management toolbox is documentation. Keep a file, digital or paper, for every tenant. Store signed leases, rent receipts, inspection notes, maintenance records, and all communication. If a tenant ever claims you didn't fix something, or disputes a damage charge at move-out, you'll have a paper trail to back you up. The landlord who documents everything is the landlord who sleeps well at night. And here's something else that's easy to overlook. Good tenants deserve attention too. If someone always pays on time, keeps the place spotless, and renews year after year, thank them. A kind word, a handwritten note, or a small holiday gift can go a long way. It's not just about being nice. It's strategic. Happy tenants are long-term tenants. And long-term tenants are your best asset. In the end, managing tenants isn't about control. It's about leadership. You're leading the relationship, setting the tone, and guiding the experience. You're the one who decides whether this business runs on crisis or clarity, on guesswork or systems. And when you manage well, when you stay professional, respectful, consistent, and responsive, you build something that's not just profitable but sustainable. Brandon and Heather want you to remember that people are the heart of this business. Properties may bring in the income, but it's the people inside them who make or break your experience. Manage those people well, and you'll find that landlording isn't just a job, it's a craft. Of course, not all tenants are easy. Some, no matter how well you screen or how clearly you communicate, will bring problems to your doorstep. So in the next chapter, the Turners pull back the curtain on the tough stuff, what to do when rent doesn't come, when rules are broken, when things go truly sideways. Let's step bravely into Chapter 10, Dealing with Problems. Chapter 10. Dealing with Problems. Every landlord, no matter how prepared, eventually reaches a moment that tests their resolve. Maybe it's a rent payment that doesn't show up on time. Maybe it's a complaint from a neighbor about noise at 2 a.m. Maybe it's an apartment left in disrepair or a tenant who simply vanishes in the middle of the night. These are the moments that make your pulse rise and your stomach drop. But Brandon and Heather Turner are clear. If you own rental properties long enough, problems are inevitable. The question is not whether they'll come, but how you'll handle them when they do. The Turners begin this chapter by reframing our relationship with problems. Too often, landlords see them as failures or signs that something has gone horribly wrong. But in truth, problems are just part of the business. Like rainy days in farming or slow seasons in retail. They're not a sign that you've messed up. They're a signal that it's time to respond, and more importantly, that you've entered the realm of real-world landlording. The most common issue landlords face, of course, is the one that hits closest to home. Rent that doesn't come in on time. There's a very particular panic that sets in when your mortgage is due and your tenant hasn't paid. And here the Turners stress your success lies in having a plan, not panic. Step 1 is always communication. Reach out with a calm, non-accusatory message. Ask if something went wrong or if they simply forgot. You might be surprised how many issues are resolved with a polite check-in. But if the excuse train starts rolling, I get paid Friday, my car broke down, I'll have it next week, then it's time to shift from conversation to procedure. This is where many landlords falter, getting stuck between empathy and business. But the Turners urge you to lead with structure. Issue the appropriate legal notice for your area, often called a pay or quit notice, which gives the tenant a fixed window of time to pay or vacate. This isn't cruel, it's clarity. You're not punishing, you're enforcing the contract that both parties signed. When that notice is ignored or deadlines pass, you escalate to filing for eviction through your local court system. And while the idea of eviction can sound scary or confrontational, Brandon and Heather remind us that it's simply a legal process. You're not throwing someone into the street. You're upholding your end of the agreement and asking the tenant to uphold theirs. With proper documentation, clear communication, and a clean lease, most courts will side with you. The mistake most landlords make is waiting too long, hoping the situation will fix itself. It rarely does. But not all problems come in the form of unpaid rent. Sometimes the issue is behavioral. You might have tenants throwing loud parties, keeping unauthorized pets, violating occupancy limits, or turning the front yard into a scrapyard. These problems often arise slowly. Maybe a neighbor complains once, or you notice something off during a drive-by. Again, the Turners advise you to act early, clearly, and calmly. Don't ignore issues hoping they'll disappear. Address them. Reference the lease. Send a written warning. Document everything. And if the issue continues, follow your legal process. Perhaps the most challenging problems are the ones that blur the lines. A tenant might be late but communicative. They may be struggling financially, but have always been respectful. Maybe they want to break the lease early due to a life change. In these cases, the Turners suggest seeking solutions that protect you financially but still honor the human side of the equation. Could you allow them to find a replacement tenant? Charge a lease break fee? Use their security deposit in lieu of a final rent payment? Every scenario is unique, but the principle is the same. Find a mutually fair exit and keep everything in writing. Then there are the truly messy situations, tenant abandonment, for example. One day you notice the mailbox overflowing, the blinds drawn for weeks, or maybe the neighbors mention they haven't seen anyone in months. You try calling, emailing, knocking, nothing. At this point, your instinct might be to change the locks and clean up. But you can't. Tenant property rights remain until the legal process plays out. In many states, you must post a notice, wait a certain number of days, inventory their belongings, and follow a precise process to reclaim the unit legally. Skip these steps and you could open yourself up to liability, even if the tenant is long gone. And of course, there's the ever-present tension around damage to the property. You do your move-out inspection and discover cigarette burns in the carpet, holes in the wall, and a broken cabinet door hanging loose. Your heart sinks. Here again, the Turners' advice is simple. Don't argue, document. Use the photos from your move-in checklist. Take fresh ones. Make detailed notes. Send the former tenant a written breakdown of the costs. If they push back, your documentation will protect you. If they disappear, you may need to forward the debt to collections or pursue it in small claims court. Either way, stay professional. What ties all of these situations together, from late rent to lease breaking to property damage, is a need for one thing: systems. You don't have to decide how to handle each problem from scratch. Instead, develop a playbook. When rent is late, you send a notice. When behavior is out of line, you issue a warning. When someone disappears, you follow your local abandonment laws. The more systematized your approach, the less stressful each challenge becomes. But it's not just about process. It's about mindset. Problems feel less overwhelming when you stop seeing them as battles and start treating them like business transactions. You're not punishing tenants or letting people walk all over you. You're managing expectations. You're enforcing contracts. You're running a professional operation. And sometimes, surprisingly, a problem can become a gift. A tenant who breaks the lease might give you the chance to raise the rent or upgrade the unit. A noisy neighbor might motivate you to clarify your house rules. A maintenance dispute might inspire you to create better documentation systems. Problems, as unpleasant as they are in the moment, are often pressure points for improvement. In the end, dealing with problems isn't just a part of being a landlord. It's the forge where great landlords are made. It's in these tough moments that you develop your calm, sharpen your professionalism, and build the systems that make your business stronger. And once you've weathered enough storms, you stop fearing them. You start seeing them for what they are: moments to lead, moments to learn, moments to grow. As Brandon and Heather often say, landlording is not about being perfect. It's about being prepared. And when you prepare well, when you approach problems with courage and a clear head, your business becomes sturdier, your reputation grows, and your stress melts away. So now that you know how to handle the worst of it, let's shift to the best of it: building systems that run so well they solve problems before they even start. It's time to talk about automation, documentation, and designing your rental business to thrive without stealing your time. Let's step forward into Chapter 11, Getting Rid of Bad Tenants. Chapter 11, Getting Rid of Bad Tenants. There comes a moment in nearly every landlord's journey when optimism collides with hard reality. You had high hopes for the tenant, you did the screening, used a solid lease, and even shook hands with a smile. But something changed. Rent stops arriving. Complaints start trickling in. The unit once cared for is now ignored. Calls go unanswered. Excuses pile up. And slowly, painfully, it becomes clear: you've got a bad tenant on your hands. Brandon and Heather Turner know this part of landlording intimately, and they won't sugarcoat it. It's hard. It's frustrating. Can feel personal. But it doesn't have to break you. Because like every challenge in real estate, getting rid of a bad tenant isn't about emotion. It's about process. It's not about how you feel. It's about what you do next. The first truth you have to embrace is this: removing a bad tenant is a business decision, not a personal crusade. It's not about punishing anyone. It's about protecting your property and restoring peace to your business. You're not being cruel. You're being responsible. Landlords who act out of anger or fear often make things worse. The ones who stay calm and strategic, they move forward cleanly, quickly, and with far less damage. It all begins with documentation. The moment you suspect a tenant is heading in the wrong direction, whether it's missed rent, disruptive behavior, or damage to the unit, you begin recording everything. Save texts and emails. Write down dates and details of incidents. Take photos of the damages. Keep copies of any complaints from neighbors. The more thorough your records, the clearer your case becomes, both for the tenant and, if needed, for the courts. Then comes communication. You always start with a conversation. A late rent payment might just need a reminder. A noisy weekend could be a one-time lapse in judgment. You reach out with respect and firmness. You remind the tenant of what's in the lease, ask for clarification, and give them a chance to make it right. And sometimes they do. They apologize, pay up, and correct course. But when the behavior doesn't change, when the rent is late again next month, when neighbors keep complaining, or when the unit continues to be neglected, you escalate. This is where far too many landlords hesitate, hoping things will improve. But the Turners are clear. Wishful thinking is not a strategy. If you give a bad tenant too much rope, They often tie it around your business. The escalation usually begins with a formal notice, often called a cure or quit notice or a pay or vacate letter. This document tells the tenant they've broken the lease and gives them a set number of days, depending on local law, to fix the issue or leave. It's official, but it's also a final warning. Sometimes it jolts tenants into action. Sometimes it simply confirms what you already feared. They have no intention of changing. When that notice expires without resolution, you don't wait. You file for eviction. Now, the word eviction tends to stir up stress. No one likes the sound of it. But the Turners urge you to think of eviction not as some dramatic showdown, but as a legal reset button. It's a structured process, set up by your local court system, designed to remove a person who is no longer upholding their end of the contract. You are not throwing them out into the street. You are using the law to take back your property in a lawful, respectful, and professional way. And here's where all that documentation pays off. With a signed lease, payment records, communication logs, and photos, you walk into court with confidence. You don't plead. You present. You show the judge that you've followed every step. Most of the time, the court sides with you. A writ of possession is issued, and the tenant is ordered to vacate. But there's another route that sometimes works and often saves time and money. It's what Brandon and Heather call cash for keys. The idea might sound absurd at first, offering money to a bad tenant? But consider the alternative. An eviction can take weeks or months. You lose rent. You rack up legal fees. The property often gets trashed on the way out. So instead, you offer an incentive. Leave peacefully by Friday, and I'll give you $300 and not pursue anything else. You get your unit back faster. They walk away with dignity. It's not rewarding bad behavior. It's minimizing damage. If they accept, you draft a short agreement signed by both parties, outlining the move-out date, the payment, and the condition of the unit. Then, when they hand over the keys, you hand over the cash. Simple, clean, efficient. But when neither court nor cooperation works, when the tenant digs in, refuses to leave, or disappears halfway through the lease, you lean once again on procedure. If they abandon the unit, you follow local laws on abandonment. You don't rush in with a locksmith and garbage bags. You post a notice, wait the required number of days, document what's left behind, and handle their property appropriately. Every step matters. Skipping one can lead to legal trouble, even if the tenant is long gone. And after they leave, whether by court order, cash deal, or silent exit, you deal with what's left. Maybe the place is spotless. Maybe it's a disaster. Either way, you document everything. Take new move-out photos. Write down the damages. Get repair quotes. Apply the security deposit where allowed. Send an itemized letter. Forward any unpaid balance to collections, if necessary. And then take a breath. Because yes, it's over. The bad tenant is gone. And while the road was rough, you made it through. You did what good landlords do. You stayed professional. You followed the rules. You protected your investment. But most importantly, you learned. Because every bad tenant teaches you something. Maybe you need stronger screening, a tighter lease, faster response times, more consistent follow-up. These lessons don't feel good in the moment, but they make you stronger. And with each challenge, you become the kind of landlord who doesn't just react, you lead. You stop fearing the worst-case scenario because you've lived it and survived. And that quiet confidence you now carry? It's the foundation for scaling your business. Because when you're no longer afraid of the downside, you're free to build upward. And that's where we go next. You've handled the tenant problems. You've protected your property. Now it's time to think bigger, to grow your portfolio, streamline your systems, and build a rental business that runs smoothly no matter how many units you own. Let's continue into Chapter 12. Dealing with contractors. Chapter 12. Dealing with contractors. When you invest in rental properties, sooner or later, you'll come face to face with the contractor conundrum. Something will break, a leaky faucet, a burst pipe, a faulty heater in the dead of winter, and suddenly you're thrust into a world of tradesmen, tools, and timelines. Whether you're fixing minor damage after a tenant moves out or remodeling a unit before leasing it, contractors are the people who literally hold the screws of your business together. But here's the thing: Brandon and Heather Turner want you to know good contractors are priceless, but bad ones can cost you time, money, and sanity. It starts like many landlord pitfalls, with good intentions and bad assumptions. You hire someone who seems nice enough, you agree on a price verbally, shake hands, and expect the work to go smoothly. But days pass. Deadlines stretch. The job looks halfway done, or worse, it's finished but full of shortcuts and sloppy detail. Maybe they will stop answering calls. Maybe they ask for more money before finishing. Maybe the work wasn't even permitted. And now you're stuck cleaning up a mess that could have been avoided with one critical habit: setting clear expectations in writing. The Turners hammer this point home. Every project, big or small, needs a detailed scope of work. What exactly will be done? What materials will be used? When will the work start and finish? How much will it cost? Will there be deposits or staged payments? Who's hauling away the trash? What paint finish are they using? All of it matters. When you assume they know what you want, and they assume you know how they work, that's where miscommunication breeds. What you need instead is clarity on paper, signed by both parties, before anyone lifts a hammer. But even before that scope of work comes the search for the right person. And finding good contractors, especially in competitive markets, can feel like searching for buried treasure. The Turners recommend asking for referrals from other investors or real estate professionals. Don't rely solely on Google or Craigslist unless you're willing to gamble. The best contractors are often found through word of mouth. When someone tells you, "This guy showed up early, under budget, and cleaned up after himself," take note. Once you have a name or two, treat it like a job interview, because it is. Ask how long they've been in business, whether they're licensed and insured, and if they have experience with the kind of project you're hiring for. Ask for references or pictures of past jobs. This isn't being picky, it's being smart. Anyone who bristles at your questions probably isn't the type to deliver consistent, high-quality work. Respect goes both ways. When you're ready to work together, don't throw them into a massive project right away. Test them. Give them something small, a window repair, a ceiling fan installation, or a basic paint job. See how they communicate. See if they meet the deadline. See how they handle changes. A good contractor will treat a small job with the same professionalism as a big one. If they show up late, leave a mess, or quote you one price and charge another, you've just saved yourself from a much bigger mistake. And once you do hire someone for a larger project, be present but not overbearing. Show up on site. Ask questions. Offer water or coffee. Let them know you care, not just about the job but about working with them. This isn't about micromanaging, it's about managing. You're still the boss, and a visible, respectful presence often results in better craftsmanship. Just don't become the hovering client who second-guesses everything. Let them work. But hold them accountable too. Payment structure matters. Never pay the full amount up front, ever. It might be common in some industries, but in real estate, staged payments protect everyone. Maybe 1/3 to start, another third midway through, and the final third after the job is complete and inspected. That final check is leverage. Don't give it up too early. And if you change the scope of the work mid-project, which often happens, write up a change order. Get signatures. Update the budget. This is business, not a handshake deal among friends. And yes, even with all of this in place, things can still go sideways. Maybe a contractor stops showing up. Maybe they ghost you halfway through the job. Maybe the work is worse than you expected. Don't panic, but don't ignore it. Start by having a respectful but firm conversation. Point to the contract. Ask why they're behind. Give them a chance to explain or fix it. Sometimes a gentle push is all that's needed. Other times it's a sign you need to move on. Firing a contractor mid-job is stressful, but finishing with someone who doesn't care about the outcome is often worse. Better a delay than a disaster. On the flip side, when you find someone great, treat them well. Pay promptly. Praise their work. Refer them to others. Build loyalty. A contractor who feels valued will go out of their way for you, especially when you're in a pinch. You're not just building repairs, you're building relationships. And in this business, relationships are everything. Ultimately, dealing with contractors is about trust, and trust is built on systems. Document everything. Communicate clearly. Stay involved. Be professional. The more you treat your property like a business, the more professionals will respect you as a business owner. The best landlords don't just manage units, they manage people. They lead teams. And contractors, when properly chosen and guided, become part of that team. They're not just fixing a leak or laying tile. They're helping you protect and grow an asset that serves your future. So next time you get that call about a busted pipe or an appliance on the fritz, don't dread it. See it as another opportunity to strengthen your systems, reinforce your standards, and work with someone who helps carry your business forward. Because when you learn to deal with contractors well, you free yourself up to focus on what matters most: growth, freedom, and peace of mind. Now, speaking of freedom, what if your rental business could run without you constantly hovering over every repair, lease, and payment? What if systems, automation, and outsourcing could give you back your time while your portfolio continues to grow? Let's explore that vision next in Chapter 13, What to Do When Your Tenant Moves Out. Chapter 13. What to do when your tenant moves out. There's something strangely final about walking into a rental unit after a tenant has moved out. The space is quiet, hollow even, like it's waiting for its next chapter to begin. The marks on the walls, the faded patch in the carpet where a couch once sat, the faint scent of cleaning supplies, or sometimes neglect, all of it tells a story. And for a landlord, that moment marks a very specific transition. The lease has ended, but the work has just begun. Brandon and Heather Turner understand this well and take us by the hand through the delicate, often overlooked process of turning over a unit properly and profitably. It all begins not when the tenant leaves, but when they first let you know they plan to move out. Whether it's a formal written notice or a conversation, the smart landlord knows this is the starting gun for your turnover system. From that moment forward, it's about preparing not just the space but yourself for the steps ahead. One of the first things the Turners recommend is reaching out to the tenant to schedule a pre-move-out walkthrough. This isn't about being nosy or controlling. It's about setting expectations. Walking the unit with the tenant a week or two before they move out gives you the chance to show them what you'll be looking for, what counts as damage versus normal wear and tear, and what they can do to get their full security deposit back. It's also a chance to spot early what repairs or cleaning may be needed, so you can line up vendors ahead of time. After that walkthrough, you'll want to remind the tenant to leave the utilities on until the last day of their lease and arrange to have them transferred back into your name. This may sound like a small administrative detail, but it's actually a big deal. There's nothing worse than showing up to a vacant property ready to work and finding there's no electricity to test the lights or water to check the sinks. Slows you down, and time is money during turnover. When move-out day finally comes, ideally, you'll meet the tenant for the final walkthrough. This is your moment to assess the property. Bring your original move-in checklist and your photos so you can do a side-by-side comparison. Inspect everything: the floors, the walls, the appliances, the windows, the doors. Look for things that are broken, stained, missing, or damaged. And don't forget to check the smaller details: blinds, smoke detectors, faucet handles, closet doors. These are often overlooked, but can frustrate a new tenant quickly if they're not working properly. Document everything, take photos, and note anything that will affect the security deposit. Once the tenant has handed over the keys, your very next move, before you even start cleaning or inspecting further, is to change the locks. This isn't about trust or paranoia. It's about protocol. Even if you believe the tenant returned all the keys, you can't be sure no copies were made. For a small cost and a few minutes of your time, you buy security, professionalism, and peace of mind. The next piece of the puzzle is the security deposit. Now is when your documentation pays off. Most states give landlords somewhere between 14 and 30 days to return a tenant's deposit or provide an itemized list of deductions. You must know your state's laws and follow them exactly. Miss the deadline and you could be forced to refund the full deposit, even if damage occurred. Itemize everything fairly and clearly. If there's damage beyond normal wear and tear, show photos. If repairs are needed, include estimates or receipts. The more transparent and organized you are, the less room there is for disputes. With the tenant officially gone and the paperwork in motion, it's time to begin the turnover work. This is where efficiency really matters. A vacant property doesn't generate income, so the longer it sits empty, the more money you lose. The Turners stress the importance of having a checklist and a reliable turnover team in place. Cleaning comes first, deep cleaning, not just a surface wipe down. Even if the tenant cleaned before leaving, assume it needs to be done again. Then repairs and maintenance follow. Patch holes, touch up paint, fix broken hardware, and replace anything worn out or unsafe. Don't skimp, but don't over-upgrade either. The goal is to make the unit fresh, functional, and move-in ready. At this point, even if you're not finished with the repairs, you should already be preparing your marketing. Take new photos, high-quality, well-lit ones. Craft a compelling, accurate listing. Get it posted where your ideal tenants will see it. On the rental sites, local classifieds, maybe even on social media or your own website. The idea is to create overlap, finish repairs while you're already generating interest. That way, as soon as the unit is ready, you're showing it, screening tenants, and moving toward reoccupancy. And here's where the final, often forgotten, part of this process comes in: reflection. Each turnover is a chance to learn. Ask yourself what went well. What could be improved? Was the tenant easy to work with at move-out? Or did they seem confused or upset? Could better communication earlier in the lease have made a difference? Was the cleaning deposit sufficient? Did the lease clearly spell out expectations? This is how your systems evolve. Every move-out, while a little different, reveals gaps in your process and gives you the opportunity to plug them. Before long, what once felt like a chaotic scramble becomes a smooth routine. You'll move through the stages: notice, walk through, move out, inspection, repairs, and marketing with confidence, not confusion. And that confidence, that's what frees you to grow. Because the better your systems, the less stress you feel. The less stress, the more time and energy you have to expand your business, invest in more units, and focus on the parts of real estate you actually enjoy. So the next time a tenant gives notice, don't panic. Take a breath. Open your turnover checklist. Call your cleaner. Schedule the walkthrough. And smile, because what once felt like an ending is actually just a polished, professional new beginning. Chapter 14. Business organization and bookkeeping. There's a moment in every landlord's journey when the hustle and the hands-on work begin to evolve into something bigger. It might happen quietly, maybe while you're filing last year's receipts, or when you're squinting at a stack of utility bills, wondering where all the money went. Or maybe it hits you when tax season rolls around and you realize your little side investment has started to look a whole lot like a real business. That's the moment Brandon and Heather Turner explain, when you're called to stop thinking like a hobbyist and start thinking like a business owner. Because that's exactly what you are now. Whether you own 1 rental or 10, you're running a business, and like any good business, it needs structure, order, and clarity. It needs systems. And yes, it needs bookkeeping. Let's face it, most landlords love the idea of passive income, but few enjoy dealing with spreadsheets, bank accounts, or folders labeled receipts. But if you want to grow, to truly succeed, to sleep peacefully at night knowing where your money is and how your business is doing, this is the work that must be done. And it doesn't have to be complicated, just has to be consistent. It starts with separating your personal life from your rental business. That means opening a separate business bank account. Even if you only have 1 property, this is a game changer. Every rent payment should go into that account. Every repair, every maintenance bill, every expense should come out of it. When all your financial activity flows through one clean stream, it becomes infinitely easier to see how your property is performing. You won't have to dig through personal transactions to find a $74 plumbing bill. It'll be right there in plain sight. From there, the Turners recommend creating a paper trail that makes your business auditable, accountable, and protected. Every lease agreement, security deposit record, maintenance invoice, contractor estimate, insurance policy, and tenant communication, these is not just random scraps of paper or forgotten emails. They're assets. They're your defense in a legal dispute, your proof in a tax deduction, your guide when a question arises months or years later. Keep everything organized. Scan documents. Back them up digitally. Use folders by year, property, and category. Even something as simple as Google Drive or Dropbox can become your rental headquarters if used with discipline. Now let's talk bookkeeping. This is where many landlords get nervous, but it's not about being a math genius. It's about tracking inflows and outflows. That's it. Every time rent comes in, log it. Every time you pay for a repair, log it. Include the date, the amount, and what it was for. Break things into simple categories: maintenance, utilities, property taxes, insurance, and management fees. You can use a spreadsheet if you're just starting out, or you can invest in property management software like Stessa, Rentec Direct, or Appfolio. What matters most is not which tool you use, but that you actually use it. Once you're tracking things regularly, patterns begin to emerge. You start to see when maintenance costs spike, when certain tenants are late, or when cash flow is thinner than expected. These aren't just numbers, they're signals. They tell you when to raise rent, when to budget for big repairs, and when to reconsider a tenant's lease renewal. Good bookkeeping doesn't just help you file taxes. It helps you make decisions. Real, strategic, informed decisions that protect your bottom line and your sanity. Speaking of taxes, this is where organized landlords really shine. Because at the end of the year, when Uncle Sam comes knocking, you'll be ready. You won't have to guess or stress or dig through boxes. You'll print out your income and expense report, hand it to your CPA, and breathe easy knowing everything is documented. And yes, the Turners strongly recommend using a real estate-focused tax professional. Someone who understands depreciation, repairs versus improvements, and the dozens of legal deductions available to landlords. The money you spend on a smart CPA will come back to you many times over and save taxes and peace of mind. Of course, taxes also raise the question of business structure. Should you create an LLC? Should you operate under your own name? Should you set up a trust or an S-corp? The Turners are careful not to offer legal advice, but they encourage every landlord to learn their options. An LLC, for example, can offer personal liability protection by separating your rental property from your personal assets. But forming one involves paperwork, costs, and ongoing maintenance. The right choice depends on your goals, your risk tolerance, and how many properties you own. Talk to both an attorney and a tax advisor. Don't wing it. And finally, let's talk about mindset. When you treat your rental business like a business, everything changes. You walk into a unit with the eye of an investor, not a handyman. You talk to tenants with the confidence of a property manager, not a nervous owner. You set boundaries. You make decisions based on numbers, not emotions. You stop reacting and start leading. And your properties, they respond to that leadership. They become more profitable, more predictable, and more scalable. So if your receipts are still stuffed in a shoebox, if your rent income shares a bank account with your grocery money, if your lease files are buried somewhere in your inbox, now's the time. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Now. Take an afternoon. Open a new bank account. Set up folders. Pick a bookkeeping system. Commit to entering your numbers every week. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to start. Because in real estate, the people who win long-term aren't always the ones with the most properties or the fanciest deals. They're the ones who stay organized, who know their numbers, who build their business on rock instead of sand. And once your foundation is strong, the possibilities are endless. Chapter 15. 13 Principles for Being an Incredible Landlord. By the time you reach this point in the journey, something inside you shifts. You've made it through the details, screening tenants, signing leases, managing move-outs, handling contractors, and balancing your books. You've heard the stories, followed the advice, and probably pictured yourself in dozens of real-life scenarios. And now, Brandon and Heather Turner want to leave you with something deeper, something that goes beyond systems and strategies. They want to pass on the mindset. Because in the end, it's not just the tools that make a landlord great, it's the principles, the internal compass, the values that guide every decision, especially when things get hard. So here they offer 13 principles, not rules carved in stone, but truths lived in experience. These are the quiet disciplines that set incredible landlords apart from the rest. It begins with this core idea. Treat your rental properties like a real business. You are not just a landlord. You are a business owner. And that means setting standards, not winging it. Having systems instead of reacting to chaos. Being professional with your tenants, with your vendors, and especially with yourself. When you treat your rentals like a business, everything changes. How you carry yourself, how others treat you, and how profitable you become. The second principle follows naturally. Screen tenants like your future depends on it, because it does. One great tenant can make your year. One bad one can ruin it. This isn't personal, it's business. Trust but verify. Pull credit. Check criminal backgrounds. Call references. Look for consistency, honesty, and responsibility. Don't rush the process just to fill a vacancy. Wait for the right fit. You're not just filling space. You're inviting someone into a long-term partnership. Then comes clarity. Set crystal clear expectations. Most problems in landlording come not from malice, but from miscommunication. A tenant thinks rent is due on the 5th because no one told them otherwise. They install a satellite dish because the lease didn't mention it. You must over-communicate the rules before they become issues. Write it in the lease. Say it aloud. Put it in writing again. People respect clarity. It shows that you're serious and saves everyone from confusion and conflict later. Next, we land on something many landlords learn the hard way. Be proactive, not reactive. Don't wait for the water heater to explode. Don't wait for the late rent to become 2 months of missed income. Step in early. Do routine inspections. Schedule preventative maintenance. Follow up on minor issues. The landlords who lose sleep are the ones constantly putting out fires. The ones who sleep soundly are the ones who planned ahead. That leads us straight to the 5th principle. Leave emotion out of your decisions. Real estate is emotional. It's people's homes, it's your money, it's your time. But if you let feelings lead, you'll burn out. You'll second-guess every decision. You'll bend rules you shouldn't. You'll resent tenants who take advantage. You need to stay steady. Kind, yes, but firm. The rent is due on the 1st. The late fee applies on the 6th. Business first, emotion second. Because professionalism protects everyone. And while you're operating professionally, you must also know the law and follow it. This isn't optional. Fair housing rules, eviction procedures, and lead paint disclosures, these are serious matters. You can't enforce what you don't understand. And ignorance can cost you thousands or worse. So make it part of your routine to learn. Read your state's landlord-tenant laws. Stay current. Consult experts when needed. When you operate inside the law, you operate from a place of strength. But don't let legality replace humanity. Which brings us to respect your tenants. They are not just rent checks. They're families, young couples, retirees, students, people. And most of them want the same things you do. Peace, safety, stability. Treat them with dignity. Communicate clearly. Respond promptly. Listen. It's not a weakness, it's good business. Tenants who feel respected are more likely to take care of your property and stay long-term. And while you're respecting others, respect yourself. Your time matters. Your rules matter. Your property matters. Don't be the landlord who says yes to everything. Don't tolerate abuse or manipulation, or excuses that keep repeating. Set boundaries. Enforce the lease. Hold people accountable. You can be compassionate and firm. In fact, the best landlords are both. Principle 9 is one of the most powerful. Build systems, not just habits. Habits are good, but they're personal. Systems are scalable. Systems are the secret to doing this with less stress. What do you do every time someone applies to rent? Create a checklist. What do you do when rent is late? Use an automated response. From maintenance requests to lease renewals, the more you standardize, the smoother your business runs, even when you're not available. Tied closely to systems is the need to keep learning. This industry changes. Markets shift. Laws evolve. And your own goals will grow too. Read books. Join forums. Attend workshops. Listen to podcasts. The best landlords don't have all the answers. They just keep asking better questions. Stay curious and you'll stay ahead. Now don't forget this next one. Expect problems. But don't fear them. There will be leaks. Late rent. Difficult tenants. And yes, even evictions. But every problem has a solution. The key is to face them early and calmly. Don't catastrophize. Don't retreat. Learn the process. Take the next step. Challenges are part of this journey, but they don't have to define it. Principle 12 may surprise you. Be generous. Not foolish. Not irresponsible. But generous. Fix the extra item. Leave a welcome note. Drop off a small gift card. Be the landlord who goes a little beyond, not because you have to, but because you want to. People remember generosity. Builds goodwill. And goodwill turns into fewer headaches, longer tenancies, and better reviews. And finally, remember your why. Why did you start this? Was it financial freedom? A better life for your family? Retirement? Legacy? Whatever it was, hold it close. Because some days will be hard. But your why is the anchor that steadies you. The fire that fuels you. The reason you pick up the phone, do the walkthrough, pay the bill, sign the lease, and do it all again next month. At the end of it all, being an incredible landlord isn't about perfection. It's about showing up over and over again with integrity and intent. It's about running your business like it matters because it does. You're not just providing housing. You're building security for yourself and others. You're shaping lives, shaping neighborhoods, and shaping your future. So stand tall. Stay humble. Keep learning. Keep leading. And above all, keep going. Because if you apply these principles day by day, decision by decision, you won't just be a landlord. You'll be an incredible one.